with the invocation and pledge by the Honorable Kirksey King.
Lord, as we enter this meeting, we ask you to guide us and lead us. Give us the wisdom that we need to make the best decisions for the people of Newberry County, and that those decisions be mostly in your favor, Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kirksey, because that was not on the agenda for the prayer tonight, and I appreciate you volunteering to do that. All right, item number 2, appearances. We have A. Laura Neese Carna.
Good evening. I do have handouts for you, but for social distancing, I will leave them on the side of the table unless you want me to go ahead and hand them out to you. Or I can pass them, you can pass them along.
We'll pass them. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Thank you for taking the time to hear me out tonight. I will go ahead and tell on myself. I did request to have a sit-down with Mr. Wade and Miss Debbie and Karen, and they did email me on the 18th of March, but giving all the coronavirus emails that I was getting on top of trying to get my kids settled into homeschooling, I missed the email. So they recommended that I come and speak with you tonight. So what I'm wanting to do is I am asking for 2 part-time, 29-hour-a-week positions for 2 deputy coroners at $20,000. I'm not going to read everything, but just highlight what I'm asking for. Within the last 3 years, my office has employed 8 different deputy coroners that possess the necessary experience per state statute as a valuable asset. Unfortunately, with the total of $25,000 that's allotted to my office and distributed to all the deputy coroner salaries, I was unable to retain those individuals. As of right now, excluding myself and the chief deputy coroner, the 2 deputy coroners that I have employed get $5,000 each a year, which is roughly gross $360 a month. If you compare that money to the minimum wage, it comes out to $3.10 an hour. And I've done that equation for you as well.
Now, who gets that?
Tiffany Johnson and
I
Madison
don't
Cates,
need names.
2 of my deputy coroners. This request does not include any salary adjustments for myself or my chief deputy. The duties that are required of us extend beyond just family members. For unlawful deaths, we're a critical entity proving instrumental evidence and information to agencies responsible for investigating those unlawful deaths. This information goes beyond just the law enforcement agencies that we serve. It also goes to the solicitor's office, who was responsible for prosecuting those who have done our victims wrong. I have listed 13 different, are you raising your hand? Okay. I've listed 13 different responsibilities that we're charged with, to include, of course, responding to all death scenes that occur at people's homes, autopsies, transporting decedents to and from or to hospitals where the autopsies occur, even if they happen in the deaths happen in Richland County. We're responsible to transport them back to Newberry. Also, the required training and certifications that we are trying to keep through accreditation have increased. And the county taxpayers have lost money on those trainings due to deputy coroners resigning before taking the courses. For example, The basic course without travel expenses for a deputy coroner is a minimum of $795. When Deputy Coroner Byra Track was working with me, he was to complete the investigating training. However, he resigned before completing the training due to the lack of pay and the lack of availability of his full-time job that put food on his table. Thankfully, that academy was able to transfer the class to Deputy Coroner Ringer, saving us that additional $795. He did, in fact, complete the course, but has since resigned from the office due to the lack of pay and increased time at Newberry County EMS. I also require my deputy coroners within 2 years of becoming employed with the county to sit for the ABMDI exam, and that is a cost of $400 each. As of right now, we've paid for Chief Deputy Kevin Worley, who has sat for the exam, and we also paid for Deputy Coroner Ringer, who, like I said before, resigned before even sitting for the exam, and that money is non-refundable through the American Board of Metalegal Death Investigations. Lastly, our call volume. I've given you a 10-year summary of what the call volume has looked like for the coroner's office, starting in 2010 to the present day. Our call volume has steadily increased over the past 10 years. So with that being said, our autopsies have increased and our calls of service have increased. We just don't go out to a call and pronounce a decedent and leave. We also have to make, when we're doing homicide, suicide, and accidental cases, there's next of kin notifications that need to be made, autopsies that need to be scheduled and attended, inquests to be held, and task force requirements by law that need to be fulfilled, just to name a few. In closing, with these increasing demands and requirements of the office, subsequently result in increased time and commitment expected from myself, the chief deputy coroners, and especially our new deputy coroners, which means extended time away from their families and personal responsibilities. To expect the level of commitment from an employee while providing substandard compensation is inappropriate, to say the least. Also, in closing, I put in the recommendation from the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners from our June accreditation. They quoted, "A review of the staffing pattern for this office has raised some concern. The county handles approximately 340 cases per year. The concern is with the low number of personnel, 1 full-time coroner, 1 appointed chief deputy coroner, and 2 appointed deputy coroners will leave liability and job stress. The staffing shortage may become an issue, and this needs to be addressed in future budget reviews." And that's why I'm bringing it to you today. Lastly, therefore, based on the justifications I've described above and in your reading, I'm requesting your approval of the salary proposal so that we can not only obtain but retain the kind of qualified people for the citizens of the county. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Questions, Laura? Okay. Debbie?
Yes, ma'am.
In your budget request, you asked for $30,000 for one and 2 at $20,000.
Yes.
And this one only addresses $20,000 for 2?
Yes. Sometimes I feel like there could be some compromise. So remove the $30,000 and just requesting the two $20,000.
So it's 2 20s?
Yes.
So basically, you're asking for a $40,000 increase in 2 29-hour people, right?
I think with the way that we have it now, since the two make $5,000, that would be $10,000, correct? So it'd actually just be additional $15,000 and make them 29-hour employees.
With fringe, that $20,000 that you asked for doesn't have any fringe.
Correct, because they stay at 29-hour employees, they don't qualify for the fringe benefits.
But there are
Oh, okay. Okay, it would have to include that.
All right, questions? Steve?
Laura,
Yes, sir.
your last paragraph there where someone did a review on the staffing pattern,
Yes.
was that a written review?
Yes, it was. When we were accredited in June of 2019, that was one of the recommendations. And I'll be glad to forward that report to you if you would like.
If you would, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? If not, thank you, Laura.
I would also like to thank you guys for the computers. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jason Hintz, EMS Director.
Good evening. Chairman Lewis and Council, Administrator Adams, thank you for seeing me this evening. Lord, what are you telling? I met with Administrator Adams and his staff on March 19th to discuss budget requests to build an additional ambulance. That is in addition to our one remount that was already projected by Administrator Adams and I think the previous administration from EMS. All of you should have packets on your desk that shows, has some pictures in it, that shows the current state of some of our trucks. Just bluntly, our fleet is in disrepair. Of course, you don't know what you don't know when you first come somewhere. And last year's budget, of course, was completed prior to my arrival at the county. This year, we have requested to build one additional ambulance to add to our fleet to make a more user-friendly in the back of the truck, in the safer truck, but I also understand there are budget constraints. We were this past, or current budget year that we're in, able to do 2 remount trucks, and we do thank you for those. But with the condition of our fleet currently, we need to continue to either add additional remounts or start looking at new builds. If you remember, I think Mr. Adams reminded me of it in our meeting on the 19th. It was about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, Little Mountain Rescue truck had a problem. So they were looking at taking a vehicle out of EMS to put in Little Mountain and building a new one. But a review of the fleet at that time of the EMS vehicles showed that really there was nothing worthwhile to switch around because our trucks, a lot of miles, a lot of wear and tear on it. So that's what we're trying to correct now. The original request that I put in for our budget was an additional $245,000 to build a new ambulance. Now, of course, I'm talking with Ms. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, can you just pull that up to you closer?
That better?
Sorry, is that better? Well, our clerk, the council's at home watching
okay.
this, and she
Sorry.
can't hear it. She's gonna be transcribing the minutes, so
Okay.
she's texting
Is
us.
she good now, or? Okay. In meeting with Administrator Adams, and knowing the budget constraints that we're going into, not to mention our current situation just in the country period, we know that budget times are tight, and next year will be even worse than where we're at this year, more than likely. So what we're asking, instead of building a brand-new truck to add to our fleet, we are asking for reconsideration to change to 2 remounts. This past year, we purchased the remount vehicles, and I believe it was around $172,000 is what it costs to remount a truck. So we're asking, EMS is asking for reconsideration instead of building a new truck to reallocate some funds to let us do 2 remounts in the coming budget year.
So that would be 2 times 172?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your original request?
The original request, and we currently have a vehicle scheduled for remount that was done by Administrator Adams and his staff. So the original request was for a new build at 245. That's changing our specs, making the back of the trucks a little bit safer, Currently, we have some hard edges and hard corners, metal placed in the back of the truck. There's in the step well, our needle box and some other items are mounted on a metal railing that you can actually grab and use to pull yourself into the vehicle. But if you're involved in a crash and you're sitting on the bench seat, you're going to wind up into the needle box and the metal. Vehicle crashes are the #1 killer of paramedics and EMTs nationwide. And so we want to move toward building a safer, more user-friendly vehicle for the crews to utilize.
Other questions for Jason?
What year are those vehicles?
The current year models that we have, and by just 1 second. The oldest vehicle in our fleet is a 2009. It is slated to be repaired or replaced this year with a remount. So they'll take the body, the box off the back of it, put a new chassis under it, go through, clean up some stuff in the back, repaint it, new decals. But anytime you're remounting a vehicle, keep in mind that you're taking one manufacturer that built it, and now you're having somebody else work on it, trying to match electrical connections and everything. So there's always going to be little things. Just like with new vehicles, there's always little things that have to be repaired, or you have to send them to the dealership. The next youngest vehicle in our fleet, ambulance-wise, goes to 2012. Or next oldest, I'm sorry, 2009 and 2012.
That's the next oldest.
Yes, ma'am.
Jason, do you have the miles on these two while you're?
Yes, sir. The last reading on the oldest ambulance that we have is sitting at 148,493. There was a practice in EMS prior to my arrival where they did what they called frontline or first out trucks, which is really good for fire departments because you take a truck that sits primarily or does not have the response numbers and the mileage, and you can maintain them. They're not in the road every day. Makes it a little bit easier to rotate vehicles through and get service done. You can actually extend the life of the vehicle. But in an agency that you're on the road, a lot of our transports, of course, to Columbia, going to Greenville, Spartanburg at times, you have to have the vehicles in a state of readiness. So what happened with the plan of frontline trucks, crews would swap out of a vehicle for service or other mechanical issues. They would fix it, and then they would get right back into it. So then you wind up with older trucks that have issues because nobody's driving them and you're not finding them. And then you're running the wheels off of the newer trucks. The next oldest vehicle in our fleet, just like the 09, is 144,627. And then the newest one prior to, is a 2017 year model. It's not the one we had remounted this past year, 66,575. We average, I think it's about 250,000 miles a year, roughly, on our fleet. And of course, if you divide it out over the 9 vehicles, about 22,000, 24,000 miles per truck. But you're not doing, you're getting in and out of vehicles, so we changed the practice and try to have all of our vehicles in a ready state.
So Jason, the thing that you want is 2 remounts.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we would like to remove our initial request of a new build, just recognizing the financial times, and do the 1 remount that you recommended, plus 1 additional to try to bring some of our deficiencies up to par. The pictures you have are, I think, 3 or 4 different trucks that we have. We didn't want to bombard you with every truck in the fleet, but you can see the cabs of them, some of the upholstery and things, and people think, well, that's not really something, that you have to have or looks nice, but that is the face of Newberry County. We are representing you and Newberry County. When we roll up in somebody's front yard, we put their spouse or, one of their children in the front of an ambulance, and all they see is a big rip in the seat. It's the broken window effect.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, sir.
When you remounting one, do they work on the mechanical part of it?
The chassis is a brand new chassis. They take the box, the module, the patient compartment off, and they go through, they clean up some of the wiring, try to make everything match. They do some reupholstery work and that type thing. In the back, some of the photos you'll see there's wood, pieces of wood trim that are missing. And either we either have to, anything that we have in our fleet cannot have any tears in the upholstery in the back and cannot have any covers missing off a wood grain. So all these things are also gonna have to be repaired.
So I guess that basically is because if any human fluid were to get
Yes, sir.
inside of an open area in the
Yes, sir.
back.
That is due to the bloodborne pathogen regulations and DHEC 61.7. So we have a lot to get caught up on.
And you're saying 245 for 2 remounts?
No,
versus-
sir. 245 would be the cost of one new build with new specs.
Okay, okay.
And so it'd be the one,
2 remounts would be 344.
yes, ma'am. I don't have the Rona, I just got a dry tickle from the pollen, sorry.
I know, we all
The
do.
245 is for a new one,
A
correct?
brand new, front to back, everything brand new in the vehicle.
And the remount one approximately what?
The remount is 172, 73
That's for one.
for one, yes, sir. Eventually, we are gonna have to build new trucks. I have not been able to find a standard that designates you can remount an ambulance 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. But once the oldest truck, which is, county number 04, I think it's the first set of pictures in your packet, all of our vehicles will have been remounted one time.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? When we get down to it, this is one of our primary responsibilities is providing safety for our citizens, so.
Have we budgeted for one,
For one, yes,
for
ma'am.
one?
Yes, ma'am.
One remount?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
So our request is to reconsider to make a second remount.
Okay. I thought that's what you said.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Neese, Mr. Hintz, Ms. Neese and Mr. Hintz. Thank y'all for the services y'all provide. I appreciate everything that y'all do, especially in the trying times that we're in. It's even more appreciated. So again, thank y'all. Thanks for your time to come out tonight.
Before Jason leaves the podium, Mr. Chairman, the amortization on that additional remount would increase the debt service budget by about $37,000.
That would be for the extra one.
Yes, for the extra one, over and above what's in the budget now.
Okay. Okay, y'all, plus 37,000, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Have a good evening.
All right, general operating budget, I guess, Mr. Adams. All yours.
We usually do this in the conference room, so we're all looking each other in the eye, so I figure my best position tonight would be up here at the podium. Council's budgeting authority extends to 3 separate levies. We have the general operating levy, which is where most of the expense of running the county government is. We also have the bonded indebtedness levy, which handles all of the rolling stock purchases, land purchases, major renovations and building type projects. And then the third one is the community services levy, which of course funds the Newberry County Library System, the community services budget, the Newberry County Library System, Piedmont Technical College, and the Agency for Disabilities and Special Needs. For any given levy, we determine the millage rate after we look at all other revenues for that budget. We divide the property tax need by the value of one tax mill. That gives us the number of mills we need, which we convert to a rate simply by moving the assumed decimal 3 places to the left. For FY 2021, the general operating budget is balanced at $27,038,791. This is $721,909 more than the prior year, which is actually the current year, FY 1920. So we're going to talk a little bit about the major part of the revenue and expense changes for the operating budget. On the revenue side, first of all, the mill value We had estimated a mill value when we were at this point last year, working on the budget, of $141,755. In reality, looking at collections through February 2020, we have a mill value of $143,298, which is about 1.1% above what we had estimated. And generally, the finance staff tries to be cautious and not overestimate the value of a mill. In non-reassessment years, historically, we have seen the value of the mill grow by about 1.5%. And that's the factor we used on top of the $143,298 for a budget mill value of $145,477 for the budget that's before you now. Another major item that's in the budget, $258,381, is 4 new school resource officers. Now, the money for the salaries for this $258,000 comes from the state. State pays for the resource officers, but they don't pay for the equipment, the uniforms, the vehicles, and so forth. And we'll talk about that when we get into the expense side of things. Another major revenue increase is from tipping fee. Tipping fee is what commercial and industrial businesses pay at the transfer station to dispose of their solid waste. We are forecasting an increase based on 2 factors. One is we're seeing that tonnage grow. The other thing is we're raising the tipping fee from $46 per ton to $48 per ton. We're actually losing right now, I think, 30 cents per ton on every ton that crosses the scale. The use of fund balance notably goes down by almost $150,000 compared to the current fiscal year. In fact, it declines by $149,713. So of that $721,909, we've just described almost 78% of it, or about $560,000. To get to the rest of it, we'll be glad to do that, but it'll take more than just a summary presentation to do that. But you have the detailed information before you, and staff is more than ready to discuss that. Looking at the expenditure side, here's some of the major expenditures that are part of that $721,909 difference from the prior year. One is we have proposed adding 1.5% to the payroll for increases for employees. That cost is $175,191, and that includes all of the associated payroll costs, such as those for retirement, Social Security, and workers' compensation. The next item is the retirement system itself. The state has been requiring a 1% annual increase in the employer's contribution for the retirement system. This year, that adds to our existing payroll, which is before the $175,000 that I just mentioned, adds $127,148 to retirement costs. We're seeing our tort liability insurance increase by $39,300. We have 2 inflation index contracts that will be increasing by a total of $44,961. Those are for vehicle fleet maintenance and EMS services, which we contract through the hospital. IT-related costs, this really has to do with the fiber situation. I think, Karen, we haven't paid for fiber in the past, but now we're going to have to.
Currently, we're on the city fiber, and they've not charged us. The city has given the rights to that fiber to WC Taylor. At some point in time, we will start having to pay for that fiber, so we are trying to include an estimate of what we think it's going to cost.
And that estimate is $54,874, but that number also includes some computer replacement, I think. Council's contingency, a non-specific line item, is increased by $92,397. Getting back to these resource officers, I mentioned the $258,000 grant from the state for the salary expenses. we address the vehicle expenses for these deputies in our debt service budget, but here in the expense side of general operating, we have $47,000 for costs such as uniforms, telephones, protective vests, and weapons. Those were not covered by the grant. We have additional facilities management expenditures of $57,340. Those are spread across several contracts dealing with service in HVAC, landscaping work, and also some paid janitorial services, contracted janitorial services. For our solid waste collections, we are recommending an increase of $56,399 solely for the purpose of increasing the pay to the recycle center attendants by $1 per hour. Central Court's budget is increasing by $27,393 for computer replacement. We also have some increases, about $35,000 at the animal shelter pertaining to spay and neuter cost, but also to our trap, sterilize, and release program for the feral cats. Those expenditures I just mentioned to you total $953,270. Offsetting that, we've got some one-time expenses in the current year for economic development that won't recur, that have to do with testing and engineering and surveying industrial sites. So that is offset by $413,500. So what I'm describing to you is increased expenditures of $539,770, or about 75% of the total, the difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. Now, that's sort of the executive summary of the general operating levy. If you look behind the tab for general operating, there is a more detailed discussion of revenues and expenditures. Something that we didn't touch on here, if we look at page 3. If you look at page 3 in table 2, everything that's highlighted in yellow there is property tax related revenue. Together, those sources amount to almost $19.5 million, which makes up about 72% of the county's budget. The green line item there is the use of balance brought forward, which, as we said, is going down by $149,713 in the proposed budget. If you're going over to the next page, we see top 10 taxpayers, which has not changed a lot since the prior year. I think they've just changed in order, but those are Oscar Mayer Foods, Newberry Electric, SCE&G, which I guess is now Dominion, West Fraser, Kisswire, Samsung, Georgia Pacific, Duke Energy, Pioneer Frozen Foods, and Graphic Packaging International. Just below that, we show you how we work through the mill value that we used during the budget time last year, and how it really turned out during the collection cycle, and what we are proposing for FY 2021. On page 7, you see a table of expenditure changes that's more exhaustive than what I've given you here. In fact, this particular table equals the entire amount of the change in the budget, I believe, about $721,000. Those are the major items in the general operating budget. Are there any questions?
Mr. Adams,
Yes, sir.
we've lost some revenue. Can you explain that to us? I've got a total here, I think, from 1920 all levies to the 1920 council levies that are listed on page 5.
Page 5 under general operating?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Help me, help,
About the top 10 taxpayers?
Yes, top 10 taxpayers. What they were paying and what they're gonna be.
well,
What we're gonna be collecting from them.
yeah. major industry invests under what's called a fee in lieu of taxes. And with that investment schedule, there is a depreciation that applies to the machinery and equipment inside the building. It actually decreases at about 10% per year. Now, there will be reinvestment in some cases, but there can be years in which there's a net decrease or a net increase based on whatever investment was made versus, as opposed to the depreciation schedule. What we are looking at in the future is the loss of some revenue on the buildings, where companies are no longer in a fee in lieu of taxes. They can now value their building in such a way that it's based entirely on market, not construction costs. And because these buildings are aged and so specific to what the company does, it reduces the value greatly. We're going to see that with Kraft Heinz, I believe, starting next year.
The total that I get for 1920 versus 1819, and I only looked at council levies, is actually an increase. If you look for the individual taxpayer, it may go up or down depending on which taxpayer it was. I think it's a total of $4,166,714.
Yep. Mine doesn't have a total in the new year,
How is it?
so she's running that now. So it's slightly more.
Yes, $4,166,713.
So basically $162,000 more.
Yes.
Right.
The reason I asked that you explain that is it's with live streaming, and if there's somebody that's watching this, I wanted them to try to understand that it can change each year.
Absolutely.
For all levies in FY 1920, it was a total of $11,526,788. Is that right, Kevin?
Hang on a second. I'll do
I think she's going to run the total for the column for this year. We omitted the totals for the new year. Sorry about that.
I know that this is the prior year, but it'll give the people an example of how much it can change. And somehow or another, we have to make up the difference.
Well, and also while she's doing it, we also have an unfunded mandate technically from the state with the, let's see, where did I write it down a while ago, but anyway, with the funds we have to pay for additional retirement.
Yeah, about $127,000
Yes.
there.
Which is
That's like an annual occurrence.
Hmm?
That's like an annual occurrence.
Well, I think it's been,
Yes.
since they reanalyzed that, I think it was $143,298. No,
Goes up.
Sorry?
It goes up.
Yeah. We're going to see the retirement contribution requirement increase. It was originally stated several years ago it would be through 2022, but I'm sure it's going to be much, much further into the future than that.
yeah, that was $127,148.
Right.
And the value of a meal is approximately $145, so that's almost an entire meal right there, just an unfunded mandate technically.
Right. So those are the major items, but any concerns in particular?
I would just want to make the point that out of all the levies, and I just figured it up the best I could, we had $11,526,788 out of all the levies. The part of that the county council levies is $4,166,713. That leaves $700,095. That is school.
Yeah, the better part of the levy for FELO goes to school bonded and school operations, school bonded and dentist school operations. On an owner-occupied home, the owner doesn't actually pay for school operations levy. They only pay for bonded indebtedness. So it's a little bit different for our industry than it is for an owner-occupied home. But on a second home or in a business, you do have to pay school operating taxes.
And another thing that appreciative of is the money from the state for the school resource officers. But all the businesses does not go. There comes a price to put them in equipment and keep them safe. And I think that was another $40,000, which is basically another unfunded mandate.
Right, and we have been working with the school district on taking some additional revenues from some of the future FILO deals to help offset this, but it'll be a while before that revenue stream catches up to the numbers, the expense numbers that you see in your books.
Some of these things are driven by the society that we're currently living in, and it's making people fearful, and rightfully so, that you've got to have basically a school resource officer at almost every school, so sad times.
Moving on to the community services budget. The current year's levy is, for these purposes, is 6.9 mils. Staff is recommending that we stay at 6.9 mils. On the one hand, we could levy 6.7 mils and get the same amount of revenue, but I think the idea is for those agencies to benefit from the growth in the mill value. And for all three agencies, that growth amount is $57,409 combined. And we apportion that to them based on what they were getting in the prior year. And you can see in your books the requests that they've made. Some have requested quite a bit more. The library system requested $616,705,000. We are proposing just a little over $500,000. And Piedmont Tech asked for $615,188, and we're proposing $464,293. In total, that levy will produce $1,003,791, we are estimating. Yes.
There is an error in that packet, that statement in the community service.
Okay.
Instead of the $57,409.
Okay.
That total should be $28,313.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the increase from going, from staying at 6.9 mils instead of reducing it is actually, say that number again, Debbie?
$28,313.
$28,313. So among three agencies, that's really not a great deal of money.
Sorry about that.
Any questions about funding for Piedmont Tech, the library, or disabilities and special needs? If not, we will move on to the debt service levy, which we use to fund such things as property acquisitions and improvements, major building repairs and renovations, and we buy heavy rolling stock such as ambulances and fire trucks through this levy, and also public works equipment. The debt service levy is not restricted by Act 388. As you know, under Act 388, the county can only raise its operating levy based on a combined factor of the growth in the population and also the CPI is determined by the state. By the way, the levy, we project the levy for general operating would not increase. It would stay at 122 mils. And we've talked about the community services budget staying at 6.9 mils. Now we're on to this debt service levy. And when we estimate the needs for debt service levy from property taxes, we have to take several things into account. One is amortizations that's being carried over for prior years, because a lot of this equipment that we buy, we're buying on 5-year cycles, which is about the life cycle of it. So we're still paying on things from last year this year that we were paying on last year, and so on and so forth. We also have amortizations that are associated with new indebtedness. One thing that is very much out of council's control, and this has always been the case, is any additional funds on hand that the auditor might have. And that varies from year to year. I think last year, there was significant funds on hand, and we, do you remember how much it was, Debbie? Anyway, the funds on hand will reduce the need for current year property taxes. The other thing that council can do is advance pay debt, existing debt ahead of time. That would figure into the levy as well. So if we look at page 5 of the executive summaries, everybody have that executive summary? You should have some colored stripes on this under the executive summary. It's the first tab in the book, and it's page number 5.
Back at the front of the book.
Okay, give everybody a chance to get there. There you go. Okay. If we look at the top, we see the expenditures for the debt service levy for FY 2021. Existing unmatured amortizations, stuff we're still paying on, in other words, $1,323,610. Proposed new amortization, $208,946. Let me skip on ahead and say what we're talking about purchasing with that additional new amortization of $208,946. Pumper tanker fire truck at $325,000. So far, we have one ambulance remount in at $174,000. A motor grader for Public Works for $229,590. 2 heart monitors for rescue. And here are your 4 vehicles for the Sheriff's Department, for the new school resource officers. The total of that is $958,590. That would require debt service of $208,946. The total needed for debt service levies, $1,532,556. Now, that has a millage equivalent of 10.54 mils. Now, we have to look at, again, the auditor's funds on hand and anything that the council might advance fund to pay down debt ahead of time. So if we keep the same levy as the prior year, we will get $1,032,782 of that funding. For there to be no tax increase, we would take $106,986 from funds on hand, and this is a number recommended by the auditor, and $392,788 of fund balance. So without that, the difference, 3.44 mils would have to come from a property tax increase. And that is the debt service levy. Any discussions on expenditure items there? Debbie, I'm correct, it's 7.1 mils for the current year? And for, okay. Fortunately, everybody's got plenty of at-home time to study this budget, make changes between now and June. I know council's had the budget for a couple of weeks now, and here we've had a chance to present it. There's still another workshop to be had on May 13th. One programming note is we had originally planned for a public hearing on May 6th. We don't really know if we're going to be able to pull that off. The public hearing is sort of a problem for us because we need a way for the public to provide input if we're actually going to have a public hearing. And we can do that through technology, or we can have people phone in or perhaps email in or whatever. But we might be looking at changing that public hearing to May 20th. Does anybody have a problem with that date that you know of? if we're going to have it on the originally scheduled date of May 6th, we have to actually advertise next week. Andrew, are you guys on a one-per-week schedule now?
Just
We
Wednesdays.
publish our notices of public hearing in the Newberry Observer. They've gone from twice a week to once a week temporarily. So we have to figure that into the notice to the public. Now, if we were going to have it on May 20th, we could wait as late as April 29th to make that, to publish the advertisement of the public hearing.
Are y'all okay with doing the May 20th? I think that maybe stability within our county, state, country might be a little more relevant at that time. Not that, but at least it'll give it a fair chance for people to be able to come and actually speak or ask questions about, or again, have a true public hearing.
May 20th works for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, May 20th.
It's a regular scheduled council.
Okay.
I'll remind council, we still have the issue of the rezoning down for Palmetto Point Cottages. That's had a second reading. We are sort of dog paddling until we figure out when we're going to be able to have a true public hearing. We'd like to have it in the traditional format where people can come and speak. But if it doesn't look like that can happen by May 20th, I think that's when we would change course and sort of introduce some technology into it.
Okay. So basically, as the budget is written right now, we're looking at a 3.44 mil increase.
Unless you want to pay down, you have a significant fund balance. You can pay down existing debt. That's an option that the council has.
Okay. All right, if any of you would like to inquire about what that would do, how we could do that, that would be something I guess we could do at some given time between now and that time period.
Something to think about between now and the next work session or second reading. Like, we do have the benefit of time. I think we've all got more time than we actually really want now.
Yeah.
It's a sort of odd state of affairs, but I'm not sure anybody really wants to spend a bunch of time reading the county budget, but it's just a necessary thing that you guys do every year, and you've been quite studious about it for the time that I've been here. And of course, the staff will be available to answer questions to you anytime. We can meet with any member of council as long as they stay 6 feet apart from us.
Travis, you too close.
Yeah, I know, I figured that.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Adams while he's still at the podium regarding the budget?
So as it stands now, after increasing to 344.
Unless you want to advance fund some of the debt. If you place that with the auditor in advance, she won't have to levy. It's like every other levy that we have. Before we determine how much we need from current year taxes, we look at either funds on hand or funds from other sources. We have, for instance, for general operating, we have 64 revenue sources, but 72% of that comes from property tax related sources. And 97% of that comes from just 20 sources. The sources are fewer in number when we talk about a debt service levy. We're talking about the current year's levy, and we're talking about what the auditor has on hand and what the council might advance fund to pay down debt early.
So what is your advice?
Well, at some point, you're going to have to pay for the indebtedness. There's no doubt about that. Things can change with the revenue stream. Unfortunately, these days, it's not looking real good. We are fortunate in that we rely on the property tax. It's a very stable revenue source. If you look at the state, which relies heavily on income tax, you look at cities that rely on business license tax or sales taxes of various kinds, and they are going to be much more sensitive to this than we are. That said, one of our major revenue sources is the local government fund. I don't know that the state will go in and change that based on revenue projections. But when you shut down the entire economy virtually, that's going to have an effect on their revenues. Right now, I think we're showing, what's the increase we're showing, Debbie, do you remember?
Less than $90,000.
Less than $90,000 for increase in the local government fund. And the local government fund is, tell us, Debbie, how much exactly?
Just read that again.
Local government investment, is recommended $1,638,663. Prior year it was $1,548,866 for a difference of $89,797.
So we are looking at 1.6 million of our $27 million coming from that. It's not a major source, but we could see them, for instance, pull back on that increase of $90,000. That's a possibility. Now, as you look through the budget, look at some of the expenditure increases that we talked about. If we go back to the executive summary, and these are just the major items. There's the $175,191 for salary increases. If you take that away, you're not going to affect the debt service levy, but you will affect the total mills needed. You could bring down the operating levy. And right now, we're at a total levy of 136 mills. Now, we can't do anything about the retirement contribution. That's mandatory. We've got $92,000 added to contingency this year. That might be a place where you can cut something. I think if you're looking for no tax increase, we are searching for, hang on, the number that's on that red line that says commitment of fund balance to pay debt, $392,000. The $106,986, the auditor tells us, is there in funds on hand that she has. Hang on a second. It's 2.7 mils. It's not 3.44 because the 3.44 would include the funding if we had to replace the funding from the auditor, and we know that is there. So we're looking at 2.7 mils now, and if we're looking for no tax increase in the debt service levy, I mean, you can always look at these items that are being proposed for expenditure this year. That's going to be some tough cuts. I know our motor grader is very old, and we need to replace it. Because now Jason wants an extra ambulance. Now he's holding up two fingers. He's saying 2 extra ambulances. So, and of course, the state has put on us this expense for the resource officers for the vehicles. We can look at some of those. But I think you'll have to look at a combination of things in the operating budget and in the debt service levy if you want to get there to equilibrium.
How much of the fund balance can we probably?
If you got the number for the fund balance?
One thing we gotta be very careful with the fund balance right now, and this is our first reading of our budget, but based on the state of the world, state and the economy and locally, toward third reading, we might can make a change and see kind of what might be happening at that point, but having a rainy day fund might not be a bad idea considering how things are right now. Again, I know we got some extra, but playing with it too much this early in the game might not be a good idea.
And we might have to look at some other expenditures too. I mean, some of that might include investment in economic development product, which, you know, you can look like a profit if you have lots of economic development product, meaning land that can be used for industrial development, when things are really going well in the economy like they are now. But I will remind you guys that when I first came here in 2006, the county had just bought a lot of property over on Highway 773 for economic development. And everybody thought that the council was just crazy. Now, we wouldn't have a lot of the investment that we have if they hadn't done that. But I guess I want to say that profits only get rewarded into the future. And you may have to balance some of these investments in the future against the needs that we have now. That's the economizing problem. You have to meet an infinite list of demands with a finite set of resources. That's what council does every year. It's never easy for anybody. There's nobody out there who's got easy answers. I've been doing this for 25 years. There are no easy answers. I know that.
To answer Mr. Reader's question, we're using 1.3 million, 1.375.
For fund balance. Were you saying what is fund balance at, or how much are we use? I think he wants to know what it's at.
Yeah, I see down here, we at the 5.72 months.
We're at 5.72 months, and a month's worth is $27 million divided by 12. We need to stay at about at least 4.5 months. That's my recommendation. In old days, it used to be 3 months was the figure that was used. If you want to make sure you have no cash flow problems, because you have to remember, the state, if we talk about mandates, and this is not a new mandate, this is something that's built into the way county government operates. We have to, according to state law, begin spending appropriations on July 1. Remember I talked about 72% of our revenue comes from property tax related sources? Well, guess what? Most of that doesn't come till the next January. So you have to cash flow the government. That's the value of that money, only to cash flow the government through that time. And if you get below 3 months especially, you will start getting nervous in November. By November, things will start looking bleak. And the year I came here, we had to do tax anticipation notes. We haven't done that since, and we're not anywhere near that now. But you have to take a long view of the fund balance. Today is a moment, and history is longer than a moment.
On June 30th of 19, we had 6.7 months of operating.
Mhm.
Staff was projected at the end of June 30th of 2020, we'll have 6.76 in fund balance.
6.76. So, but when we project that, you have to understand, we project very conservatively. In fact, we say that we're going to spend all the budget that council appropriates, which we never do. Okay, we're going to do a little better than that. Now, that doesn't include anything that the state might have to take back from us because of the economy, but that's an unusual circumstance.
And we projected the 2021 to be 5.72, and if we take that additional money, that would leave us at 5.55.
Yeah, and that's a very, very conservative number. We throw the red flag up way, way, way in advance here, because the history of this county is, back in 2006, fund balance had been spent. It had been spent for recurring purposes until it was gone. Then those recurring purposes had to continue to be funded, and so the millage had to be raised in the same year that you were having a reassessment. This was the double whammy. I think, if I remember correctly, the millage went up 23 mills in 1 year. This was before the Act 388 limitation came into be. So we're very conservative about the fund balance, and we're very particular about pointing it out during the budget process, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment, because I know over the past 11 years, we have managed to decrease millage,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
Significantly.
Yes, very much. We also got to keep in mind that the times we're in right now, there are a lot of folks out there who are losing their jobs. They're unemployed. And we don't know how long this is going to last. So the last thing I want to see us do is increase taxes. And I know, Mr. Adams, you and your staff in the past, we couldn't ask you to do any better job if we tried. Y'all have always done an excellent job, and I would just ask that we try to hold the budget this year and not have an increase.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stockman, and we urge you to have those conversations with us in this chamber, or if you want to ask in the next few days to check certain numbers, look at other ways to save money, we are here for you.
Certainly.
Well, I'm not a big fan of anticipation notes.
No.
I don't want to think about that.
We are a long, long, long way from that, but I'd like to stay a long, long way away from that, so.
Absolutely.
Well, when you look at it again, it's early. We're first reading. We've got time to decipher through this more. We'll have maybe a clearer picture as we get closer to third reading and public hearing. We'll have more knowledge of what the state's going to do for us contributing to the local government fund or taking away from the local government fund. We see the top 10 tax-paying businesses and industries in our county, and I hope they're all on solid ground. But there's a lot of others that are smaller that don't show up on this list that may not be on a solid ground. I mean, I don't know for sure, I'm just speculating. But with the economy the way it is right now, there may be a lot of changes between now and third reading. So I think we need to kind of sit and take into consideration where we are. Again, out of that 2.7 mil increase that we're looking at as it currently sits, we're looking at 4 cars for the sheriff's department for the deputies,
Resource officers.
resource
Yes.
officers that have been provided salaries by the state, but not the equipment and stuff to go with it. And we're also looking at $125,000 in retirement that we have to contribute. So when you look at the 2.7, a lot of that has absolutely nothing to do with what members of council would even want to spend. It's kind of a forced thing. And again, Sheriff, I see you back here, and I know we got, I appreciate the money from the state, but sometimes we don't get everything that's needed to make it work completely. So, I mean, again, that's kind of an unfunded mandate that we're going to be responsible for. Stephen, with you, we got to look out for our citizens, because I don't know exactly what our unemployment rate's going to. Hopefully it'll be as temporary as it can, but we're in a very different state right now for us, trying to make sure we balance everything as well as we can.
Yeah, I thought I read, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I thought I read that the budget as is was balanced
Yes, it's balanced.
with no raise, no tax increase.
The general operating budget is balanced, and we expect the levy to stay at 122 mills. We expect the community services levy to stay at 6.9 mills. Those things aren't really in doubt. What we have to do in order to have no increase in the debt service levy is to pay some debt off in advance.
Yes.
With fund balance. And that is a decision for council to think about between now and June. And we will certainly work with you. I think last year we presented an unbalanced budget at first, not unbalanced, but we were showing that it was being balanced with a small tax increase, and council worked on that. So this is April 6th. This only has to be done by June 30th. So this is to be only 2.7 mils away from where you want to be. I'm not saying there aren't tough choices, because they will be tough choices, but you could be in a lot worse shape than this, and especially if you're looking at having 6.7 months of fund balance to work with. So,
It's an excellent place to start from.
yeah, you're in good
Certainly
shape.
is.
The county's in excellent shape financially. I also want to say about the 122 mills, this is even with raising the salaries for the sheriff's deputies, which was very much needed. We were looking at, I think, Sheriff, we had 10 openings that we couldn't fill because we simply weren't paying a competitive wage. I don't think we have that many right now. I think we're close to a full complement, aren't we?
We are full.
We are full. And that is a valuable service to the citizens, and that has come without a tax increase in the general operating levy. The place that we're looking at has to do with bonded indebtedness. It has to do with the kind of expenses that are acquisitions of property, renovations of buildings, purchase of heavy rolling stock, and so forth. So that's where it, but again, 136 mills is 136 mills. If you can keep the, if you can keep the expenses in the bond indebtedness but cut in another levy, then it's the same to the taxpayer, it's fungible.
All right, other questions?
So you're
Small
saying,
statement.
it's definitely no doubt in your mind that the budget being balanced.
Oh, it's balanced.
It's balanced.
Yeah,
We're just saying, I was just saying that I thought I read without a tax increase.
yeah, it can be done without a tax increase.
Okay.
I think it's going to probably take some combination of advanced funding or cuts from the debt service levy or cut from the general operating levy. It's going to take some creativity and determination. But I don't want you to think that that's magical. That creativity and determination is going to translate into somebody not getting what they want.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take from all the county just to get a raise for some people. We want to look out for the farmers and industrial businesses.
Yes, sir.
Got to cut taxes, we want to cut a little bit everywhere.
Okay.
We can hold taxes down, we want to hold it down for everybody. We got to raise it, we want to raise it for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Everybody share the same burden as possible.
Yes, sir. Well, we understand your concerns, and we will scour this thing again and see if we can recommend other cuts. Be prepared for them to be
Thank you.
painful in some cases, so.
Well, as you said, Wayne, the wants don't bother me as much as the needs. We've got to make sure we take care of the true needs. Wants we've all had our wants and didn't get them, so needs, but what we've got to provide as a need is, the public safety and well-being for our citizens, and that's where I don't know that we can jeopardize that at all. Don't want to jeopardize it.
That's
Yeah.
what we have to do at home.
Now, Debbie, how much did
That's
we
what we
cut
have to
from
do.
the, I'm sorry, how much did we cut from the original request? Because we're here today at $27 million and some change, and the original budget was requests.
Budget request came in at $28,891,470.
Okay, so we've cut over $1.5 million.
And on another note, I was looking for this, the capital outlay alone this year was $1,795,000, and we cut it down to $554,000. So that's another
Yeah.
thing.
But council has invested a lot in the rolling stock, especially for the emergency services over the past several years. those vehicles are expensive. We're talking about a pumper tanker fire truck for $325,000 this year. And I think the plan is to actually purchase another one in the following year. So that is the wishes of the fire departments, as I understand it.
Okay, Mr. Coon?
Mr. Chairman, your statement and Mr. Stockman's statement I agree with wholeheartedly. And I've always believed since I've been on council that we should only worry about the essentials and forget about the non-essentials and special interests. And with the economy the way it's going, with the coronavirus weighing on us, that's exactly what we need to do during this budget year. Essentials, and not consider any non-essentials or special interests. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, now the budget is in the hands of council, can only be changed by amendment, by vote of council. We will do whatever research is necessary to get you the numbers for the amendments that you want to entertain.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Adams.
Good job.
While Mr. Adams is coming back to his seat, again, staff, I know y'all put a lot of hours in it, even weekends, et cetera. So thank y'all again for making all of those sacrifices to get it where it is today. Again, when you look at where it came in, $1,500,000 and something increase, that would be about 10 meals, 12 meals?
Closer to 10.
Closer to 10. So again, y'all have done a great job of cutting back from where it was. Are we on number 7? Are we on number 7?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Adams has gone through items number 4, 5, 6. We're on number 7 now, consideration of annual indexing of elected official salaries.
I'm sorry, they're trying to tell me something. What was number? Capital budgeting and fund balance. Let's see here.
I thought we had a pretty good discussion on fund balance. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, item number 6, capital budget and fund balance.
Okay. Okay, if you look under the tab for capital budgets, you will see that the capital budgets for FY 2021 as proposed, 10 of these projects are funded by agency grants in the amount of $535,022. Bonded indebtedness accounts for $1,138,177, and fund balance for $234,401 of all of the costs. There are 6 projects remaining from the capital project sales tax, the penny sales tax, and the funding for these projects is, I think relies solely on the capital project sales tax. There's no additional funding for them. We can run through these projects really quick. We talked about the Spring Hill Road Bridge repair. This is where we've got to replace 2 culvert pipes under the road and make some paving repairs. That's coming in at just short of $300,000, $297,500, and $189,000 of that is coming from FEMA. Airport layout plan, a total budget of $280,000, but $252,000 of that comes from the FAA, and another $14,000 from the Aeronautics Commission. Firefighters training ground. We have a $230,100 budget. This would be for constructing the burn building and renovating existing restrooms on the property.
The bonded indebtedness would pay for 130,000 of that, and fund balance for 100,000. Fleet maintenance building, this is a project that was in the prior year, just hasn't begun yet. This is a $250,000 for a new fleet maintenance office. This would be added on to the existing building. The speculative building at Mid-Carolina Commerce Park, this is constructed along with Marlboro Development Team and the co-op, and we have $420,000 of bonded indebtedness in that project. The project obviously costs much, much more than this. This is only a small contribution to the overall cost of that building. It's actually the co-op, the electric co-op, that is securing the debt for this, for the most part. We've got a detention center alarm system. The state says we've got to replace the system we have. That's $85,000 from bonded indebtedness. Freight elevator at the courthouse, $150,000 to repair, bonded indebtedness. We've got several roof replacements. We've got Consolidated Number 5 Fire Department roof replacement at $45,000. Prosperity Rescue Station at $35,000, and Friendly Fire Station at $35,000. Then we get into the capital projects, sales tax projects. We still have the $2 million that's set aside from the 2010 referendum for Mid-Carolina Commerce Park. We are in the midst of the Consolidated Number 5 water point project. Karen, we still have $743,000.
At the time when we did this, we're down to, they got a new payment of about $200,000, so they're right at the $500,000 mark.
Okay.
To complete the project, but it's still.
And these numbers, we adjust those when we get to third reading for actual expenses and revenues. What's left, these balances will change some. Newberry County Water and Sewer Authority, their Mid-Carolina Park project is ongoing right now.
Yes.
What are you guys laughing about? Okay. Town of Whitmire Town Hall remodel. I think it's also a police station remodel. There's $112,000 left in that. Only a little bit left in the Opera House HVAC budget. I think all but $7,300 has been spent on that. We've asked them to see if there's anything that complies with the ballot question that they could still do.
That, as well as with the HVAC supplier, they're looking at something they may have to make a change on one of your.
Okay. There's $61,000 left from the Silver Street walking track also. So, fund balance. We are showing what we would call a worst-case projection for 6/30/2021 of 5.72 months operating in reserve. Our number for this year, we are saying that when we complete the audited financial statements on June 30, 2020, we're going to be at 6.76 months. So again, the number for 6/30/21 assumes 100% expenditure of the budgets between now and then, which is not something that usually happens. That's a worst case number. If you look at the 3 prior reporting periods, it stayed right around 6.7 months of operating. It's been pretty consistent. You got anything to add to that, Debbie? Since you wanted me to get back up and talk about other stuff.
The only other thing that we did reallocate the $300,000 that was budgeted for this year for the facilities management.
facilities maintenance building.
That will be reallocated for next year, and council will have an ordinance to that effect sometime soon.
So, I mean, again, we can look at those numbers too and see if there's some place where we can whittle on this 2.7 mils. So, yeah. Anything else? There's one other item that has to do with indexing of salaries for elected officials. Our ordinance says that unless council says otherwise by the first meeting in May, that it will be equal to the CPI for the prior year. Typically, in recent years, council has said, we're going to do for the elected officials the same thing that we do for other employees. Here, you'd be talking about 1.5%, regardless of what the CPI is. It's just that your ordinance requires you affirmatively to say that we're going to do something other than the CPI, if that's what you intend. Which would include the option of saying, well, we're going to do the same for them as we do for all employees, 1.5%.
We'd have to either do that tonight or the April 20th meeting, one of the two, because
This is not
May the
amazing.
6th
Yeah,
or May the 6th meeting.
May 6th.
This is not amazing. Can you give us, maybe at the next meeting, how much that would be?
Sure.
Or I can get that from you.
Yeah, I will get that for you. We usually, as we get, I think we end up using the March number. It's going to be the most recent reported, or April. So we'll look and make sure we have that number. I'm not sure we had it before
Because
this meeting.
that's
but
not
we will get it.
included in this budget.
Correct, you're correct. What is included in the budget is we budgeted 1.5%. So if
To
it's,
include them?
it would include the elected officials too.
So it's already budgeted.
That is, but if
That's
you,
what I wanted to
but
know.
if you wanted to give them the CPI, which is going to be more than 1.5%, you'd have to add the difference.
Okay, I see. I got you. Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
Are we down to the last agenda item, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we are now for question and comments, is number 8, where we are now. Okay. All right, questions or comments from council members? Mr. Scurry, you got any questions or comments tonight?
Not at all, sir.
Dr. Rucker?
Yes, I'd like to thank the administration, staff, for an excellent job, because this is a lot. This is a lot. I thank you very much for that. These are very distressing times, and we are seeing certainly the small businesses that are closed by our governor's action and our president's action. And so I think this year we are going to have to take a very strong stand on spending. And I agree with those of you who have expressed that.
Okay. Good. Mr. Reader?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, hey, that I truly think that we're gonna have to definitely, try to keep the budget balanced by staying away from trying to raise taxes. I think this is a crucial year, because everybody knows I don't normally come to county council meeting dressed this way. So we know it is something, it's something serious going on, and we have to take our measures according to what's going on in the state of the country.
Mr. Reader put a muzzle on you a long time ago and it didn't work. We didn't expect that.
That was not hard enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you, Travis. For those listening outside public, Mr. Kane is out tonight because his granddaughter has influenza, and he is providing care for the child, I think, while mom works. So just FYI on that one. He said he'd be watching it with it being live streamed, so he should be hearing everything we've talked about. Mr. Stockman?
Just everyone be careful, be safe.
Mr. Coon?
our governor issued a stay-at-home today, work and stay at home, I think we need to take his advice. So if you don't have to travel, if you don't have to go to the grocery store or drugstore, just stay at home.
I agree, but just want to say thanks to those who don't have that option, first responders, law enforcement, all of those. Thoughts and prayers with all of you, and thanks for all that you're doing to try to keep some sense of normalcy to our world that we currently live in. So thank y'all very, very much. Also, with that being said, public comments. We had on the agenda, public comments may be submitted by email to tdavenport@newberrycounty.net or mail to P.O. Box 156 Newberry. As of the meeting time, we did not have any public comments, so if you are listening, watching the streaming video, please feel free to send it to those. Also, if you have comments that you'd like to be addressed by me, or just feed it to me, I don't mind working with people. My number's 803-518-3430, so, and Mr. Adams and those have been very, very open to anybody wanting to call or check in here. So, again, any great ideas or anything, we're more than welcome to entertain it. And again, thanks for basically just adjusting to the current status that we're in. And a lot of times we have department heads here, and I would like to also at that time, I think on behalf of all council members, we would like to thank the department heads who have always done a very good job at monitoring our budgets and trying to cause that cash flow fund balance that we currently have. So just a thank you to all of you. With that being said, we have a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion second. We are adjourned. Thank you.